Hey, what's up, guys? Thought it'd be cool to take another look at a swing analysis here of, we're going to do Brooks Koepka. He just won the 2018 U.S. Open at Shinnecock Hills. Thought it'd be cool to take a look. We have some good videos in here, and obviously we saw his ball striking all week was fairly solid. A good ball striker hits the ball a long ways. Let's take a look at what he does and maybe see some things that he does differently than some of the other guys, and some of the stuff he does the same. So we'll kind of just take a look here through, watch some different videos, and let's see what he does. So obviously a lot of power in this golf swing for Brooks. It looked like most of the week he's a fairly straight ball hitter, maybe with a tendency towards wanting to hit a little bit of a fade as a go-to shot. I didn't really see him hit a whole lot of draws during the week, very similar to the shot traces we saw with Dustin Johnson. These guys, to me, have some similar moves here, obviously, and they play together. And with all the speed they have and the power, that little bit of a curve left to right typically is a little bit easier, especially with the longer clubs off the tee and with the ball rolling out as much as it will at a course like that. So anyway, let's take a look here. So from the setup position, he has a lot of really normal things we would typically see with good players. We see the back of the armpits over the toes of the balls of the feet. Kneecaps fairly in line with that. Obviously, this is dependent on the camera angle here a little bit. Butt is not drastically behind the heels here. Like to see the angle of the shaft roughly in line with the belt buckle, and the upper arms hanging straight down. Those are typically the checkpoints that I would look for, and he does those really well. So when I say those are the checkpoints, I'm looking for, let's pull up another example, and then we'll come back to him. Another guy, Hideki Matsuyama, hits the ball really well. You'll see a lot of the same pieces. Back of armpits over the balls of the feet, butt not that far behind the heels, kneecaps in line with that, butt of the club in line with the belt buckle, and the upper arms hanging pretty much straight down. So that's fairly normal there. That looks good. So as he starts to go back, here's where we'll start to see some unique things, and things that I definitely like to see and talk about a lot. When he goes here, obviously he has gets that club head outside of his hands early. So when the club's parallel to the ground, you can see that club is quite a bit tilted down, and obviously it's well outside of his hands at this spot. Why is that the case? Well, mostly from a lack of forearm rotation. You can see this elbow for his left arm more down towards the ground than over away. His right palm here more down towards the ground, back of left hand kind of turning under. Something I preach for a lot of people that get the club face too open. What would be more normal, if you would, at this at this first spot, we'll pull up Hideki back again. Typically most of the tour guys at this point will look more like this, which is the club head will be even with or slightly outside of their hands, and the club face will be very slightly tilted down. So if you look at look at Brooks's arms compared to Hideki's arms, you can see a difference in the forearm rotation is the biggest one. Look at his right arm here compared to Hideki's right arm. Look at where his right palm is pointed more down. Hideki's is more away from him this way, where his is more down this way. Same thing with the left hand. His left hand's more down. Hideki's is more over here. That's just an indication of forearm rotation. And another guy that does fairly neutral here is Adam Scott, which you'll see the same things. Most of these guys here will be again, even with or slightly outside of the hands, and the club face will be tilted slightly downward. And again, the main difference between him and him is going to be the forearm rotation. Look at where his hands and arms are compared to where his are. Now, what Brooks does from there is he'll take that and he'll go pretty vertical or steep with it. So by the time he's left arm parallel, if you watch my videos, something I talk a lot about, when you watch left arm parallel, he's in between his toe line and the ball target line. I'm just kind of guessing where he's going here. I'm just kind of guessing it somewhere like that. So he's in between those two lines, and he's closer to his toe line. So his shaft there is definitely much more vertical on the way back than horizontal. Again, if we compare that to normal, we'll call Adam Scott just neutral. You'll see Adam Scott here. Again, the shaft line straight down is going to be roughly on the ball line for him, and all of these guys, most all these guys, will be between their toe line and the ball target line. So Koepka's a little bit on the more vertical side. Now what does that mean? That means typically now on the way down, that shaft line will, and it's already happening, see how much it's already laid down here. So here's where he's even at the top. So here's his plane at the top, there was his plane back. And obviously as he starts to come down, look at the difference between those two. So red line is the backswing line, and then orange line here, I could do better than that. Orange line is going to be the downswing line. This is something that I talk about a lot, and there's no getting around it. Their downswing plane, you watch good players, their downswing plane is below their backswing plane, or shallower than. And then conversely, that means their backswing plane is steeper than their downswing plane. So when I'm talking about getting the shaft more vertical and all this stuff, I don't really give a shit where it goes going back. All I'm saying is the more vertical it is going back, the better chance you have of it coming underneath when you come down. I've seen very few players, I can't think of one off the top of my head, who got the shaft more vertical going back or more shallow coming down, or even, forget the backswing part. I can't think of many players who got the club more shallow during their downswing or on a lower plane in their backswing and don't play really good golf. It's a commonality amongst all the great players, outside of a handful that steepen it during transition. So something, and again, I'll just show you as an example. This is about Brooks Koepka, but something for you guys to learn from this. Notice again here, Adam Scott. So his downswing plane, less dramatic, right? He's more neutral, but his downswing plane is below his backswing plane. And I could go on and on and on with this stuff. I mean, here's Hideki Matsuyama. Here's his backswing plane at left arm parallel, which is right here. Now let's watch his downswing plane. It is underneath it, right? So anyway, all these guys doing that. So let's pull him back up. So we had him at left arm parallel, gets very vertical here, starts to lay the club down at the top. The forearm rotation starts to kick in there. Wrist conditions are changing. Obviously that lead wrist is very flat to slightly bowed there at the top. Club face is very much under control. He doesn't have a lot of depth, so if you look at like the butt of the club here at the top and where he would, typically where you would see most players, he's sort of in, again it depends on camera angles, he's sort of in front of his toe line there, this being a different angle, but most of these guys you'd see somewhere between the middle of their right foot to their right heel in terms of depth of the butt of the club. So we'll pull up Adam Scott at the top. So again, this would be sort of more traditional where how deep their left arm would go, how much depth they have at the top would be. Here's another guy who was playing good, Henrik Stenson. They would be a little bit deeper at the top compared to him. And again, you want to talk about guys that strike the ball well. What does Henrik Stenson do going back? And this is not the point of this video, but it's sort of turning into the point. Again, see club heads outside of his hands in the beginning, so it's a commonality. And then by the time he gets to left arm parallel, what does that shaft look like? Steep or way laid down? Yep, steep. So here's the shaft going back in between the ball line and his toes, more towards his toes. You've probably heard that before somewhere. And then during the downswing, he's underneath that plane. So I'm not making this stuff up, right? And this is not me like coming up with the stuff. This is just, you watch the videos and what do they all do? So Brooks gets a little bit over there. Face is kind of square to where his arms, obviously he's got that bow at the top. And then when he comes back down, because he laid it down, it'll keep laying down. And then he'll get, so we get this, by the time the left arm's parallel look, this is going to be outside of the ball line. And again, his hands here, he's a little bit more out than normal. Meaning by the time his left arm is parallel to the ground, in between these phases, he's a little bit more out compared to what would be more traditional. So actually, I'll just pull him up. So here's kind of at the same, and the frames aren't perfect, but you see how his, and again, camera angles, but his hands will be a little bit deeper. Usually at this spot, you're looking again, kind of right pec, inside of right bicep, but you get left arm parallel to the ground. So Brooks is a little bit more out, not as deep the whole time. Again, we'll kind of get Adam Scott in the same spot. So the shaft angles don't look that crazy different, but notice where his hands are relative to his body here. So Brooks gets a little bit more out, and that club's going to kick and steepen the late, which is going to set up nicely for that face. You can see he doesn't throw it way under plane, right? If we had him here, if we had him here, a lot of these really good golfers kind of ride. People don't like drawing lines on there, I don't know why, because you can reference a lot of things. A lot of these guys ride that plane. They get parallel to it back here by left arm parallel. He's parallel to it, and then he's going to kind of ride a little bit high. And then he gets back on it, and he's going to get parallel again into the follow-through right there. So that would set up for pretty straight to baby fade shots, as you can see that trace there. He's not getting the club dumped way underneath. He's got the face under control. You could see during the downswing, that face is still tilted slightly down. He plays with a squarer club face, if you will, than a lot of players. And when you play with the real square clubs, you have speed like that. You can get it a little bit more, on top of the ball there, add some right lateral bend, and play those kind of squeeze fades. You know, compared to what would be more traditional. We'll just do an Adam Scott again since he's on here. What would be more traditional would be the guys would kind of ride that plane with the club head. Right, he gets a little above it, parallel to it, back to parallel to it, coming down, ride right back on it, impact, and then parallel to it into the follow through. So that would be, Adam Scott's fairly neutral player. Another guy who's pretty neutral here, Hideki, you'll see he'll ride that club head up that plane, get down the line, parallel to it, and then he stays right on top of it, and then parallel to it again. So, interesting. Brooks Koepka a little bit more vertical going back, kind of lays it down a little bit, more bowed lead wrist, and has the face very square, maybe even closed, you would say, during the downswing compared to what people would expect. Let me see if I have some other ones kind of showing the same deal here. So, again, kind of the same thing. You see he has that stick there in front of him, the exit underneath it to get those fades going. Same address positions looking really clean. And we'll see kind of the same pieces here. And this is with all his clubs. He gets it a little bit more vertical going back, not very deep. Starts to lay it down. Look at that lead wrist bowing. Has the face very square, even tilted slightly downward during the downswing. Look how square that face is to the ball already, like 2 feet behind it. Cool. So most of these are going to kind of show the same deal. We'll see, let's see here. Even as he goes into, this is the one we were watching there before, driver swing, kind of the same pieces, same set of pieces. Goes up, face stays square, a little outside the hands, gets it vertical, down the line, lays it down. Face is very square coming down. You got a lot of Dustin Johnson pieces. You see the same thing, very bent right elbow. When you have a lead wrist that's very bowed and a face that's tilted way down, the way you make that work and hit the ball a mile is what he and Dustin Johnson do, which is a bunch of right side bend, a lot of right arm bend, gets that right elbow back in front to maintain that face to path, and then throws it out here. So if we see let me see if I think I have a face on one somewhere here. Bear with me. Okay, here we go. So if you watch a Dustin Johnson face on, you'll see a lot of these same pieces. Just gets him into his downswing. And watch the right arm. Man, look how bent that arm is. And look at where his elbow gets to. So because that face is so square, that elbow gets way in front of you. Got that handle forward, right? Let's get here. So it's sort of that right elbow drives in front. DJ has the same thing. Now, some of you guys who try and do that, who have a open club face or a lead wrist that's not bowed like that, if your face isn't very square to the plane, I'm talking like looking more down towards the ground in the downswing, that pattern's not going to work for you. This works for them, and that right elbow getting underneath like that because the face is so under control, the lead wrist is bowed, and then you must have that right lateral bend. You must have that right arm look into the follow through. So I think there's a lot to be learned more for you guys that are watching from the face on during the down the line. I'm sorry, from the down the line with the iron swings. This is where you're going to have more things that are applicable to you. Only during the face on in terms of getting that elbow in front, the right arm bend, and the rotation stuff. Yes, if your club face is very much managed and you have speed and you can do that, then cool. But check out all these guys that I showed you, how their playing gets a little bit more vertical going back, a little bit under coming through. The rest of the release pattern in this is dependent on your other pieces. If you have your wrist conditions under control, are athletic enough to manage your body like that, then cool, go for it. If not, you don't need to. But anyway, Brooks Koepka, a lot of really good moves, a lot of really solid moves here. Very traditional setup. Pretty outside and vertical going back. Face is very square to the plane the whole time. Nice lead wrist conditions. Gets it underneath the plane early during the downswing, steepens it late, and plays that nice controlled fade in there. So awesome job for him. Back-to-back U.S. Opens is a rare feat. I think there's only a handful of guys ever. So awesome stuff. I look forward to watching him play in the next couple of years, and I anticipate he will have continued success. So hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below.